I am Kollan House. I'm the co-founder of MetaDAO. We're pioneering futurarchy in the Solana ecosystem. We're the first to have built futurarchy mechanism. And what futurarchy is, if nobody knows, Robin Hanson came up with it in 1999. And it's using markets to make decisions and drive decision making. He basically said, listen, there's all this information out there. Markets seem to distill this information, but we use that to drive decision making in its place. So yeah, and I'm just gonna quickly go through what a decision market is. So it's a market that directs an outcome. What are these outcomes? We use it for on-chain execution, for token issuance, transfer of funds, updating parameters on the DAO. We use it for execution of legal agreements. So I just had a proposal in the beginning of this year to do market making arrangements, gave the authority to go out on behalf of the Marshall Islands DAO LLC and go engage these people. Incorporation, we did a grant for Robin Hanson with GMU to research these decision markets and conditional markets and approval of initiatives. So we've done it for projects, quarterly plans, and new business ventures. So we kind of use it for anything and everything. We've created a legal wrapper to make sure that this stuff could work, and that's what we're using it for. How does it practically work? We trade the price of like yes and no. So should we take this action or shouldn't we? Example here on where it could work. It's also an example that I can set futurarky back by a decade is the example of firing the CEO. Jenny Rometty from IBM presided over 24 consecutive quarters. A decision market for IBM would be firing her or keep her. IBM stock would be trading higher if she expired. Therefore, that's what you do. How we do this, we split it into two tokens or two shares. We traded for 3 days. We started with 10 days. That was a long time to trade a market. And then we take the time-weighted average price of each market, and depending on some delta there between it, it executes the on-chain instruction that then allows us to go do everything. If you think about it in a fork, only one of these is canonical and redeemable for the underlying token or asset. How does this relate to the topic that we're talking about today and general in markets? This is all information flows. So we want people to reveal this information in these markets. Obviously, that's how we get better decision making. But how do we get them to do that? Do we need deep liquidity to incentivize these people? Obviously, that's a question. We trade with really small liquidity. We've traded with larger liquidity. We don't have a good answer for that. Counterintuitively, for people, having volume be a proxy of how good a decision it is actually not a good indicator outside of opinion and conflicting views of parties. The resolution is in the token price, so we don't actually do any settlement like polymarket or any prediction markets there. And so, how do we do all this stuff? We could design different liquidity curves, and then we can incentivize it to paying these things out. There's some key questions here that I'd love to have people think about is what happens, this is all public information, these proposals. What happens when this information could feed into a competitor and, destroy your business? How do you get a decision to be made there on public market? What happens if the information that's revealed creates an environment that it's no longer beneficial to the party that revealed it? In this case, we had a problem when we went out to sell our tokens and raise money. The parties would come, they'd say, hey, we're Pantera. Pantera, the attention there would drive interest in the price. It would flow through their capped price that they're willing to pay. And so that was a troubled time that we were there. And then for legal, we hired somebody through a decision market, and our pure decision market isn't exactly applicable. There's certainly a lot of legal foot guns that are there. So, are these good things for it? We know that this isn't the final form of it. We use TWAP. We know it's not great. There's a scenario where you could not impart information in the environment because the price would have to move to infinity to impact it at the very end of a proposal state of transferring me $10 million, I can get by plus. Doesn't work out. We've already said that volume isn't a great proxy for this, but maybe volume plus time off weighted average price is good. Robin suggested getting statistical programming in motion. I don't have any idea how to get that on chain and program only to an Oracle, but if you guys do, I'd love to talk to you. The other thing is like structured proposals. When a team wants to be exited or has an acquisition or goes into liquidation, we trade these proposals on a 3-day period. Maybe that's not the way that they should go. Maybe it should take 20 days because that's from the information, and that's what it would take to actually do these things. As well, proposal crafting, like how we bring this information to light for people. We don't, for our OTC deals, we no longer do anything identifying parties. We just say, here's the minimum price that we're willing to accept. Here's what we won't accept, and then we go out and submit the parties independently. So the market has to have some trust in us that we're going to execute accordingly. If any of this sounds interesting, this is the website and my contact information. Happy to answer the questions.
I'll do Tina and let him pose a question to the Kai. I think one of the things that you were talking about in your presentation was the difficulty of I wouldn't even say the right term, but you had some hesitation around objective functions and the challenge in defining them correctly, if you can. Which you also spoke about the difficulty of surfacing information. I think markets in general, but this digital markets in frontier or a mechanism for information. But one of the difficulties I know that folks have is you have to have some sort of objective function to surface this information. I'm curious if you have some more thoughts around the connection between your line of thinking and the market. So I guess you can work with different kinds of markets.
Prediction markets are your guys' wheelhouse, but I would say that they are one of the implementations of collective intelligence. But they are measuring the collective intelligence post hoc. And so what we are trying to do is kind of the complementary side, which is to provide an explanatory model for why you have results that you can measure. Right, some of the prediction markets. If we are making progress on our model, we would be able to predict, in principle, we'd be able to predict what would happen in the prediction markets if you're an actual company. Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, we don't do a settlement, right? Like, you don't ask, is this event going to occur? We say, if this event were to occur, would it, drive the price of the asset up, basically? So it's distilling all that information and imagining, like a much more broad market environment here, where you have sophisticated participants with all these informations and models that like derive into the price. But yeah, like you can imagine why does a company's share price go up? What drives that initiative? There's a ton of information out there for all this.
Have you done clustering studies on people who are
It's so small right now. I mean, we're talking about, I think our largest traded market was like 1,500 addresses. Typical markets trade with 40 addresses. The liquidity and the incentive isn't necessarily there to drive profit in our case right now, but we'd like to get there.
So, as I understand it, the sort of decision market mechanism and the initial mechanism that Kollan House does really well in situations where you over time have worked expertise. So if you are reliably providing good information to markets, then staff resources are more powerful employees. But also by using the initial mechanism, it's intended to suss out sort of the best information in any single round. And it seems to be actually talking about like decision market. For example, like right, but there might be very specific expertise for certain voting round. that may not correlate with resource acquisition over time. What does the mechanism look like that can sort of reconcile those two desires?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. We don't. The simple answer is we don't know right now. I mean, this is the first time this has ever been implemented and tried. We have a lot of opinion on how this stuff works. We use asset-based pricing for this stuff. But Robin in his original paper discussed KPI or metrics-based markets, which you run like multi-markets, all this stuff. There's been like, hey, what number should go into this proposal? Should be ran on a like separate market? So if you said like 20% allocation, that way you could get those sophisticated participants. I think if the markets become liquid enough and the capitalization of the entire industry is large enough, then you will have those experts naturally, because like whether the DEX is going to go buy a zoo that has 20 zebras, somebody that knows the value of zebras that said, hey, I can influence this decision to sell those at some point. Maybe that's the ultimate evolution of how I might think about this. That if the market incentives are there and the line is there, then you start to solve these problems.
Can you talk about some of the adversarial outcomes that you've seen so far? If it should pass through things like automatic executed, so given that there's like an on-chain treasury that can be liquidated, you seem like various proposals is a big advantage of that attack. So it's something that the research community has helped with, and others affects bad outcomes for most.
Yeah, I mean, like as the founder, I think the second or third proposal was to burn all the tokens in the treasury. So that passed. I didn't necessarily agree with it, but like we progressed through that. Right now, there is an ongoing proposal right now to drain the treasury of one of our organizations. So people can create these proposals. There's a cost associated with it. What I like about these markets is that it's not a fixed cost like a traditional 51% attack. The next day to have another proposal go through, it's still the cost of you deploying capital and time to deploying the market. So right now, like they stand to win $1.5 million if they can execute from the treasury. But like market capitalization of the token is about $8 billion. And the people that are willing to trade these markets, we've seen some of these markets trade 20 billion in total volume, which is like 5 times the market capitalization of the token. So we do have active participants that like these things. And how to prevent them? Spam. Spam is one of these things that I wish it was solved in crypto, but it doesn't guarantee